Hello, and welcome back to my channel. This is one of the most intense drawings that I have done, or paintings, I guess you would say. It started out with me really wanting to try for a more painterly style in Clip Studio Paint and working with kind of the basic brushes. I've tried a few oil brushes, messed around with a couple packs, and found something sort of similar to what I was looking for. I told myself that the way that I would paint this would be specifically starting with sort of a pencil brush, just like I would do in real life traditionally, and then move into more painterly strokes and try to stay with big shapes. Now, if you are a longtime subscriber to the art part of this channel, you will know that I like to fail at that multiple times. I always say that I'm going to have big shapes, and that's how I'm gonna start. And somehow I always get lost in the details. So when I was drawing these, I did have a driving concept that I was going to try to stay loose. I really loved the line work. I loved the sketch. This was going to originally be just a big spread of fragile, and I thought she had an interesting motif of hands. Not just her own hands, which were old in the first game, and one of the first things that we see about Fragile in the game is that her hands are aged. But in this next game, we also see she has second hands. She has sort of a mask created by second hands. We see Higgs's red hands, his gloves. We also see, of course, her regular hands smoking and doing the secret or sign. And then I thought, well, what if I draw sort of a triptych of her with each person's hands, so second hands, Higgs's hands, and then Sam's hands. And I thought that could be kind of a fun little like 3 image spread. So that's really where we started. Now, I have been practicing a certain sort of, I guess we'll call it painting style, and that is going from black and white to color. And that black and white to color is interesting because, it's a great way to lay your values down, and that's something that I do often struggle with is value work. And so one of the ways that I'm trying to fix that is by going in with values first and figuring out sort of the forms of the face before going into color. Now, the problem with this is that I'm working from the trailer screenshots, which all have different lighting structures. Not to mention, I've talked about this before, but the motion capture models are not the easiest to get a likeness from. They sort of lack the real 3D form that a person would have. The lighting is different, the environment is different, the 3D assets kind of trick your mind in a way because it is a 2D space, really, that you're looking at. But yeah, I did my best with what I had. I tried to get a likeness, I tried to have values. Now, it was at this point that I gave up on the first face and thought, I think, I really know what went through my head at that point was I think the screen cap is hurting me. The more I looked at it, the less sure I was of the proportions and the lighting and where the shadows should go. So I thought I'll move on to this other painting that I have, this other reference image, which had a stronger lighting. And I thought, well, I'll paint that one and then I'll use that lighting idea for the rest of them. Because I thought if I use the lighting off of this, even though her face is turning in the other two photos, I can sort of imagine the planes of the face as they turn much more easily than I can imagine the lighting. Lighting is something that really mystifies me, and I think it's because of the lack of practice I have with uh, like her face planes specifically. Because I think if you have a model in front of you, well, I know I'm much better at drawing from life and from 3D models, or real life models, not 3D models, than I am drawing off of a 2D model. And I think that is a lot of people. They always say if you want to get better at painting, better at drawing, you have to work from real life because you can just see things differently. Another thing that I thought was of interest as I was studying art heavily again is the concept of light and how light enters your eye, and the fact that if you are referencing off of a digital screen, especially an iPad, that the colors will never be the same as the colors that you are creating in real life, or even the colors on a different part of the screen, because the light that is entering your eye is also affecting the light that is hitting the screen. And it's just a really cool concept. It's not something that I understand enough to explain to you, but just know that if you're ever struggling with a drawing, it could even be better to just go back to the basics with the traditional and, especially color mixing. I think there's something to be said for going back to the basics and either, color picking from a very simple selection, because whenever you look at the color wheel, like, things are just insane. You can pick any color, and in real life you really don't have that. You're going to mix from a certain set of colors. And what I've done here is started what they call kind of like a overlay or a dark layer or a color layer. Now, a color layer would be a little bit different than what I've done here, and I would have needed to go a lot lighter with my values. This is more of an overlay, and layers are still, like, not probably the best way to color something, but for me, I wanted to really heavily use the values that I had put underneath it, which is kind of an oil painting technique where you put down your values and then you glaze over top of that, and it just kind of helps you keep everything, in one spot. Oil painting is probably the closest to digital painting in real life. Now, I am a watercolor artist on most days. I've never messed with oil, though I think it would be the most satisfying. And watercolor painting is such a backwards idea to oil painting, because watercolor is using as much of the white in the paper as you can, versus oil is very much about your darks first. And so I did my best to combine the different things that I've dabbled in, and once I sort of got the values and the colors sort of in range, which is what you're seeing at this very moment, then I started color picking and going from there. Now, I knew I almost wanted to go with like a split complementary, and I wanted some greens and some reds and some blues, but I also wanted her to be mostly true to color in her flesh tones. In the trailer, the thing about this was all guesswork, because the trailer that I was working from for this specific face shot was in the seam, and so it was like gray and white, which is very frustrating, but it helped me get the values a little bit better. But I didn't have the flesh tone, so I really referenced some like cheat sheets basically that kind of tell you like the yellow zones, the red zones, the blue zones, and I worked from that to really lay in the darker reds of her face and where maybe the blood vessels would be at the most. And there was a point where I realized, oh, poop, I've messed something up. She's not quite getting the lightness that I thought I had. And it took me a long time. I actually walked away from this multiple days. And when I came back, it was so easy to realize it was the eye. That one of the eyes I had just moved slightly too far over, and it was giving her kind of an odd width to her face that just isn't true to form. What I did really like, though, was the gloves. I thought they turned out so well, and putting the kind of light into the eyes just made it look so lifelike. I really liked how painterly it came out. Definitely one of my top pieces of the year. I then tried to take this idea and put it onto the other portrait. Like I said, I wanted to kind of take that coloring and try it again on the first one. Now, I ended up not loving it and decided instead to move on to the one that had a similar facing portrait. And I started it and then realized, you know what, I'm going to paint it in real time so that you guys can see my sort of thought process and my setup. And I will say I felt a little overwhelmed by it. It's always difficult to try something new. and first of all, to put it out there where everyone can judge it. But I felt confident in that first painting, and so I wanted to try to bring that back to the second one and show myself that I could do it again. It was just a matter of trying to figure it out. Now, I wanted the same thing with the gloves again, where I had the reds and the greens on the first fragile face. I wanted to go with blues and purples over here. I think it was pretty successful. I think what gets me the most about painting is just trying to keep up with everything. Art is one of those things where there's a lot to acknowledge and take in, and then try to reiterate in your own way on the canvas. And so there's, taking in values, taking in the colors, and then like regurgitating it back into your own style, your own thoughts, your own direction. And that's the part that I feel like I can do pretty good at, but it doesn't always achieve what I really want. And what I really want and always strive for is a very realistic and almost, I don't want to say photographic because that's really not what I want, but I want it to look like them. I want it to give the illusion of a very highly detailed likeness, even if it is highly stylized, and trying to merge what I want to do and what I'm capable of, and also what is even of interest to others. Not that that is something that you should always want to do, but I think we all enjoy the likes. In the Death Stranding, we all enjoy a little bit of likes, and so if you ignore what people like, then no one may ever see it, and you might not get to share that. But if you ignore what you want to do, then you burn out creatively, and that's also such a negative thing. So it really is like a fine line of what you love, what people want, and also what you need to do. So what I need to do is be good in so many subjects so that I can teach. I want to be able to teach students digital art. I want to be able to teach students traditional art. I want to be able to teach them photography, programming, computers. There's so many modes of creativity now. I mean, we have 3D models in Blender. We have the Clip Studio Photoshop painting. We have traditional painting. We have, things even outside of what I'm typically doing, which are like Conte crayons and colored pencil and crafts. I know a little bit about crochet, a little bit about knitting, and some of that comes from being just interested in art in a general way, and then some of it just comes from just wanting more outlets for that creativity. When you're inspired, what can you pick up, what can you do? Every time that I'm inspired, I'm not always capable of drawing or desiring to pick up an iPad. Sometimes I want to create through writing. Sometimes I want to create through, Photoshop, photo bashing. There's just so many different ways to be creative. One of the things I'm learning currently is Blender and, how to use it and models. And I've always been really passionate about computers. And so I love, doing things with Homebrew on Mac, messing with the terminal, and just recently, one of the things that I never realized I could do so easily was running a virtual Windows on my Mac. I did that through Homebrew, and that has opened my mind up to so many things. The programs that I thought were lost to me because I had switched over to a Mac Live are now back, and that nothing is better than that. I'm so pleased because now I have the power of some of the Windows programs that I really missed with the cloud and the iPad and my phone and my computer. They can all talk so seamlessly. And I guess that kind of goes back to art. Like, I want my creativity and all these programs, Photoshop, Clip Studio, Procreate, Traditional, I want them to all be interchangeable. If I can draw good values and good color and have good likeness in real life on traditional art, I want to have that same ability in digital. And that just takes so much practice, and it's something that I want to keep striving for, and will obviously keep striving for. But there does come a point where you do get a little discouraged when you're not where you want to be at. Like, you've noticed that I quit the one portrait a couple times, and to this day I have not went back and finished it, which has only been about a month since these were, well, maybe 2 months since these were originally drawn. But one day I'll go back and I'll probably be like, oh my gosh, these look terrible now. Or maybe I'll still be really happy with what I've done. That happens sometimes, and I always feel really pleased whenever, a better version of myself is able to come back and be happy with something that I've created in the past, and not just have the feeling of like, oh my gosh, I used to be so bad. It's really nice when you're making like those level ups. Now, I don't know if I'll do anything with this beyond just kind of how I've posted it online. I have considered making stickers, mostly for my benefit, because I would like to have little fragile stickers. That came out so funny. Fragile stickers, but I don't know. Let me know what you think I should do with this stuff. I just don't know. I love to draw, but is that all that I should do with it? Just draw, post, and that's it? Lights over? So, or I guess it's lights out, show over. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave anything you want to really in the comments. Are you playing any video games? Are you doing anything artistically? What are you doing? And, are you enjoying it? I hope you are. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!